Hello and welcome to Eavesdropping at the Movies. I'm Mike.
And I'm José.
And we've just been to see The Smashing Machine, written and directed by Benny Safdie of the Safdie brothers, and the better known Safdie brother because he's been having film acting roles as well. We saw him in Oppenheimer, seen him in Licorice Pizza, one or two other things. Whereas his brother Josh, I think, is just directing. But we loved Uncut Gems, which they made together. And after that, I was saying, like, these guys are the real fucking deal, and Good Time before that was really, really good as well. This is based on a true story, on a real guy called Mark Kerr, played here by The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, who's apparently, I've never heard of this guy. Don't know about you. And the film basically ends with a thing saying, you've probably never heard of this guy, but you should know his name. And he is apparently one of the kind of real originators of UFC fighting, mixed martial arts. Everyone when they were a kid was thinking, like, what if a wrestler came up against a karate guy and shit like that? And it's like, well, eventually they did it in the 90s, and now it's a big thing.
And I couldn't be less interested.
Yeah, I'm not very interested in it, but it is big money. It's a big sport, and it had a reputation. I remember when it started. I remember it having a reputation for being as violent as it could be, and like, people slipping over in each other's blood and stuff. From early, like that was part of the appeal, And through in this film, we see it kind of start off that way and see how the fighting gets kind of neutered by various rule changes along the lines. Well, in fairness, what we mostly see is not UFC. What we mostly see is Pride, which is a Japanese league, which is the same kind of fighting, but it's a different organisation, I think. I'm not crazy into it, but I think the film pretty much tells us that, right? It's not exactly the same thing. So I've never heard of this guy, but fine, I'm willing to see the story about, who he is and why he's so important and why he's so interesting. And unfortunately, what I think I found was a story which wasn't very interesting, about a guy I'm not really very interested in, and the whole thing is of the utmost banality. It's incredibly tedious. It hasn't seen a cliche it doesn't want to get into bed with. Really, really boring. And horrible to look at, and I didn't like the acting. I didn't like anything about this. I was already not really looking forward to it because... so it sounds like I'm just predisposed to hate it. But I would like to have been surprised. But I was already not looking forward to it because, in particular, I'm really kind of getting sick of The Rock. Or at least, I'm sick of The Rock in this form. Like, what he does is he's a big star who's behind big projects, and he's an action guy, and he's a Schwarzenegger, he's that kind of thing. And when he's doing that, I find him very likeable and very charming. That's kind of what he's built for. That's what he's very good at, putting on the smile and saying hi to everybody and like being supportive of kids on Instagram who are wrestling and all that kind of shit. And here he's like, give me an Oscar, basically.
Well,
and I'm just not into it because this is a person who I don't think is interested in the art. I don't think he's interested in any of that. And he's just going, if I have hair for once, and if I look sad, and if I'm filmed on 16mm, then I can get an Oscar. And I'm just not into that.
Well, okay, so... I've never really liked The Rock, really. I think I like him most in interviews because he's a very charming person. But I loved him in this. I thought actually, he's unrecognizable in terms of his face. Obviously, the body is recognizable. And it's the type of body that I hate anyway, that it speaks to me the worst excesses of American culture. It's a completely constructed body and worked for and drugged up and, that necessitates all of these kind of weird, unhealthy diets. And, you see people walk by and, you see these monstrous tanks and the skin looks awful and they move gracelessly because they're all clunking because they're so muscle bound. Right. So I don't understand the appeal of those bodies. I don't get it and I don't like it. But I think the thing that I love very much about The Rock in this is that the charm shines through, actually, and it cuts through both in the way that the character is written. Yeah, he's a very positive person. He's always kind to everybody. He's always kind of seeing their point of view, wanting to put people at ease, right?
He's extremely polite.
Extremely polite, and he's got that smile, and I think he plays it very well. I think there are moments in the film of real kind of heat. Yeah, so kind of you can see the sexual desire between Emily Blunt and him. Yeah, kind of the moment that comes to mind is when she's bending him, with the leg. Yeah, which is kind of, I thought was hot and flirtatious. And then the other moment that kind of really stood out for me is the moment where he breaks down and cries, and she holds him from behind, and he holds her hand. So I think it is kind of a complex portrayal of someone trying to keep things together in very difficult circumstances, and really not helped by the person he's with, who he loves. Yeah. So I think, the fact of loving, and of loving someone who's bad for you, and of kind of trying to cope with it and keep it together, and kind of, trying to come clean. I think he conveys all of those things incredibly well. I mean, I think his performance and Emily Blunt's are some of the things that I like best about the film. Though I agree with you, it's a really messy film. It doesn't work. It's not going to be an audience pleaser. Yeah, the narrative makes no sense. At the beginning, you think it's about the couple. Then you think it might be about, the best friends who are called competitors, and then it ends up, you're just being told, well, it's a biopic. But actually, as a biopic, you don't get any of the, the genre requirements. It doesn't give you, the background of childhood, or kind of what drives or what motivates, or the peaks and troughs of the career, right? Like you cut from 2007 to 2025, boom, kind of at the end. So I think it offers none of the satisfaction. I don't feel at the end of what is meant to be a biopic that I know this person.
Well, I mean, I was sort of thinking that if this film might as well have been about a fictional person, because I have no idea who Mark Kerr is. I don't really know anything about UFC and mixed martial arts and various things that it shows us. So it might as well be made up. And I was thinking, if this were fictional and completely drawn from imagination, it wouldn't be good enough. I would need it to be more interesting, more exciting, more expressive, to make more sense. And it's like the fact that it is based on a real person is an attempt to kind of get it past all this stuff that is just not satisfactory. Well, at least it's real. At least it's true. Well, it should still be interesting, and it's not. And he has his drug issues. They go away reasonably quickly. Yeah, there's a bit of drama with the wife about it, or with the missus. Fine. He has his trouble. He loses a fight, and he cries about it. I think he's really bad at crying. By the way, The Rock. I mean, there are two times that he cries very kind of openly, except it's not open. He just puts his face in his hands immediately. Like, he won't let himself actually be seen to cry. It's not proper acting. Like, let me like when men cry on film and you see them trying not to but bursting through, it really draws an audience in. You really feel it. And here, for whatever reason, maybe they decided this was like a more realistic thing to watch, or something like that. Whatever they felt, they just put his face in his hands, and you don't get to see him cry. You get to hear him cry. You get to see his shoulders heave, but there's not a build up to it. He doesn't break into it. He just bursts, and all of a sudden the crying starts. It's really, really bad.
I don't think it's bad. I thought he was excellent, really, and incredibly charming. With it, and I thought it was really nice. And a very welcoming change to see this relationship between a couple where the guy really loves and is hurt. It's usually the woman who is hurt and left and so on. Kind of this time you see kind of the effects on a man who loves. So I thought that was really great. And I also thought what was really great was the friendship between the two competitors, the mutual support, kind of the way that they interact. Yeah. So I kind of, really, really welcome that, because the world that it represents is a kind of quite a vicious world. I mean, what did you make of the scene where they go into what it's called, where the cars just bang up each other?
Destruction Derby.
A demolition derby.
Demolition Derby, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what do you think those scenes were doing there? I thought it was in a way a metaphor for their relationship.
Well, I think he sees himself in it for sure. I mean, his life, as is always the case in a boxing film or wrestling film and so on, is a life in which you get paid to get beaten up, basically.
Yes.
Or, at least to be in a ring in which the possibility of getting beaten up is there. Obviously part of the thing about him is like he's never lost a fight until eventually he does. So he is this invincible thing. But still, his body is always on the line. And, I think he sees himself in those cars.
Yes, and I thought it was very, very beautifully done. A director with great skill, because what you had is the couple watching the same demolition derby. Mm-hmm. And for me, demolition derbies are always kind of signifiers of American barbarism, right? Like, you know, here you have like these great inventions that, you know, help liberate mankind in so many ways, right? And the whole objective of the demolition derby is to demolish the bloody thing, right? To just kind of destroy, right? And I thought there was a wonderful shift in point of view between Emily Blunt, who's clearly looking at it as the spectacle, you know, and then The Rock, who is seeing himself as part of that struggle. And you know, it's so kind of clearly distinguished, yeah, in ways that are very subtle, because, I mean, you know, the camera cuts from him to her, right? Yeah, like it's not really kind of, you know, flashing around these changes in perspectives, and yet kind of, you know, they're clearly expressed, right?
Oh, for sure. The camera is putting an emphasis on how differently the two of them see it. I think there might be a two-shot of them as well that shows that.
So I thought that was really beautiful. And in some ways, you know, that might not make sense to anyone but me. There was a scene where, you know, The Rock was just walking, right? And you see the top of his thighs, which are completely muscly, and they're just moving like they have a life of their own. They're so muscly, yeah, that they're bouncing around like, you know, breasts, yeah. Which paradoxically make me think of the demolition derby. Again, you know, here is this man kind of building himself up to something that is so impractical, so unworkable, you know, and to me there was something both kind of beautiful, but also incredibly sad about someone doing that to their body. So, you know, I think the film is full of little touches like that I really love, and yet the film doesn't work at all, really, in my view.
Sad thing for me as well is that he's obviously skipped a bit of leg day, because his calves are like matchsticks. There's a shot of him sat down from the side, and his upper half is so built, and his thighs are so built, and then you see his calves. There's nothing. My calves are so sexy. Look at that. They're so big. They're so big. You can tell The Rock's never been fat, because he doesn't have a fat man's calves. And he looks really unbalanced all of a sudden when you see them. Anyway, that's just my little thing.
I thought he looked wonderful, and he was incredibly charming, and for me it was a real pleasure to see him, and to see him and Emily Blunt, who are so good together. I think, you know, she plays one of these, I mean, there's a little element of misogyny, I think, in the writing of the Emily Blunt role, right?
A little bit.
Yeah, because she's the woman who's to blame for everything, you know. Nonetheless, I think she's wonderful playing that role with that push-up bra and that kind of nervy flirtatiousness and that kind of, you know, complete self-absorption. And on the other hand, you know, alongside all of that, you get a real sense that she loves him, right? And she loves him, but she's never doing anything that's good for him, right? Yeah. So,
I don't quite see it the same way as you do. I see it as more balanced between the two of them, as to kind of, if you like, who's to blame for the issues in their relationship. I see it as much more even-handed than I think you do.
No, I don't. Yeah.
I look at the film and I think she is trying to do things for him. You know, right at the start we see her making that smoothie, and even though she hasn't made it the way that he wants, because he's decided he wants whole milk now, he wants
but he appreciates that.
He appreciates it, but she is trying. And you know, I mean, I don't like the fact, and this is, I think, an interesting thing in the film. I don't like when he says, you know, I said thank you all the time. He always says, I said thank you, I appreciate what you do. Because it's just words, you know, and that kind of veneer of politeness that he has, which works with kind of the general public. Like when he sat in that waiting room at the doctor's and he interacted with that woman, which was a bit of a weird scene, just because I think it's there really for exposition, because he strikes up this conversation that, like, you've had no real indication she's into it all. But it's like, let me tell you about wrestling, you know. So it's there for the audience. But it's also like, here's how he interacts with real people. Here's how he tries to put them at ease when they see someone, a Hulk like him, who's all bashed up. Maybe she won't find me so threatening if I speak to her nice and everything. You know, that kind of veneer of politeness works with the general public. As I think it does with The Rock in real life, by the way. I mean, this is how he interacts with people. He's all teeth and smiles and being nice and hugs and selfies. But then you get into a real relationship that he has with someone in which they don't see eye to eye about things, or they do have these fights. And, you know, that it doesn't wash, right? I said thank you. I say thank you all the time. Well, then maybe that's really not enough. Maybe you actually need to do a better job of appreciating me or being fair to me.
Well,
I see it more from her side than I think you do.
Well, I definitely see it more from his side, because that's the film side, right? Like,
but I don't. That's why I don't think. I think the film is showing it more.
Let me explain to you. I mean, because she's claiming, actually she says at some point, I liked him better when he was on drugs. He was vulnerable. He needed me. And she's someone who is shown to be like completely self-absorbed. There's the incident with the pool where, he says, I do everything around the house. And you get a sense that he really does, right? She's eating the things that he can't eat. She's taking drugs that he can't take. She's continually coaxing him to take alcohol and so on when he's an athlete. She's completely oblivious to this being like the championship match of, the world. And she just wants to party, right? So I think she's very self-absorbed. She doesn't see what his needs are at all. And I think he's incredibly patient with her.
I mean, I agree with some of that. And I see what you're saying. Maybe I didn't pick on her plying him with alcohol. I'm not sure.
Yes, I mean that whole scene which kind of continues on to her trying to shoot herself, kind of begins with that. She's having a party, and actually the mise en scène signals it to you because he's meant to be clean, and all of a sudden there are bottles of wine and the window shelves, the tables.
Right, but in terms of her pushing it onto him,
yes,
really.
She's having a party that's going to be all about drinking.
Okay, well, people get to have parties. She doesn't have to shut everything down about herself.
He's in rehab. He's been like, he's just come out of fucking rehab. Yeah. And you're throwing up kind of an alcohol party for him?
An alcohol party?
Yes.
A party where there will be alcohol.
A party where there's alcohol everywhere and where all her friends are coming and which he clearly doesn't want. Because actually I think the film makes very clear that for him it's very difficult because it's all temptation. And that's why his coach doesn't want him to go with her, like in the scene previously, and so on. So kind of that's not being supportive of a partner. If your partner's trying to get off drugs and you have a party where everyone's taking them, that's not being supportive.
No, all right, fair enough. Nonetheless, I still do see it as it being shown a little more from her side than you do. And that line that you pick up when she's in the car with her friend and she says, I think I like taking care of him. There is a way in which that's said, right? I mean, the way in which she says it, to me, comes across as genuine introspection, like something that she realizes about herself.
Okay, well, we can agree on that because I think the interesting thing about Emily Blunt's performance is there's no question that she loves him, right? And there's no question that she kind of, she's completely in love with him, but kind of she is constantly pushing him from achieving his goals, which is to fight and to win, and she just wants him to be absorbed in her, right? In their relationship. Like those two things are not contradictory, and actually I think it's one of the things that make the film kind of so interesting and so complex. That kind of you have genuine feeling between both of them, but also in my view that's not what a supportive partner would do, because actually, as he states, it's his fighting and winning that is paying for both of their lives, for all that they have. So kind of for her to kind of, be so selfish as to kind of, try to ruin that for him and not wait until after or whatever, I find kind of it's a mark of her character.
Fair enough. Well, she's, there are things I won't support about what she does in the film, and you're right, she has a lot of self-centeredness about her. I just think he does as well. She does also kind of make a point about how much he shuts her out and how little...
Sure, but you understand why that is. The film shows you, right? Because, of course, in the film, he's got basically two interests. One is his work, and the other one is his partner, right? Like, those are the two most important things in his life, right? So those areas when she feels he's shutting her out is when he's absorbed in the work, when he's concentrating on the work. She's got nothing but him. You don't get a sense that she's got a job or anything, really. So there's that imbalance there in that relationship. But I don't think that's a mark against his character. I completely understand why he needs to focus on work and, and concentrate and so on.
They also live in one of those really horrible, isolated places in the, those kind of big, wide suburbs in America where you can barely even meet your neighbour because you've got to drive to their house, sort of thing. Horrible. And you imagine how isolating that must be for the both of them. They just get cooped up in this place. Nasty. What do you think of the look of the film?
I really liked it. At the beginning, I was kind of beginning to be a bit annoyed with all this handheld camera, right? Which kind of speeds things up, follows everyone around. You see a lot of people's backs, which I always hate in cinema. But then there would be like kind of interesting zooms, within the handheld and so on. So that kind of was interesting, but it irritated. I then really liked the the whole look of it. Yeah, the kind of a certain kind of graininess that it had.
Like I said, I think it's been shot mostly on 16 now.
Yeah, it kind of it has a wonderful effect, and also the fact that I don't know if you noticed, but so much of the film is shot through bars or impediments. There's always something in the way of, kind of the action that you're seeing. And I'm not talking only about when you see the ring, because often kind of, in boxing films or in wrestling films or whatever, kind of, those bars, around the ring are used very expressively. There's a bit of that here as well. But I'm talking about more beyond that, right? Like kind of how a lot of the action is often shot like, with impediments in between.
What do you think that brings to it?
I mean, it would easily be interpreted as these are the impediments to this man's life and, his relationship, really, that there's always something in the way, something else.
Do you think it generates maybe like a visual sense of claustrophobia?
It does, yeah. I think so. Yeah, I think you get that very much. One completely amateurish thing, by the way, that I really hold against the film is that scene where they go to the amusement park and he refuses to go, right? And he ends up going on the merry-go-round course.
Yeah, carousel.
Yeah, which is kind of sweet, but this big hulking guy on the little horse. But I thought what was really poorly done was her ride, which is meant to be one of those that swirls around but keeps you in shade.
You get pinned to the wall.
Yeah, and the most famous scene of that kind of thing that I can remember is François Truffaut's The 400 Blows, Le 400 Coups, right? With this kind of that wonderful scene with the child in the middle of that, and it just whizzes by, and it looks like an early cinema kaleidoscope, and you get all the thrill and the exhilaration and kind of magic of that. Well, so you're seeing the child kind of in focus, but everything is whirring around him. And this was like so banal. It's it's shot from overhead, and you see Emily Blunt moving around, and she could have easily just as been in her bed or something, right? Like kind of, you get no sense of what the ride that so terrifies him, is like, to experience. So I thought that was awful, and shame on him for shooting it that badly.
Zoetrip, I think, is what you're thinking of.
Yeah.
I mean, when you see her pinned to the wall, it's like, did they actually do this, or was she just lying down
on the floor? Yeah.
Might as well, and then when he's on the little horse, you don't get a nice wide shot of him, which would have been really funny to emphasise how weird it is to see. Like, it's all still close up and not quite close up, but kind of mid shots and things. You don't get to see it properly. Like, come on, it's funny. It's funny for someone to be that big on this horse. Like, that's what the scene is building towards, and it doesn't really show it off. I mean, I didn't like the look of the film mostly because I think there's nothing really wrong with it. It just looks like this film always looks, which is grainy, handheld, close up, quick editing. It's meant to look really earthy and raw and real. You're meant to really feel. Yeah. And the wrestler look like this, and the fighter look like this, and all these films look like this. And you go, these films just always look like this. This is tedious.
Well, and actually in this film, it doesn't evoke earthy and raw to me anyway, because there's this wonderful moment where the character, what's his name? Mark cuts his hair, right? So first you have this impersonation of The Rock as Mark, very handsome and I love the look. And then of course he cuts his hair and becomes The Rock.
He does indeed. It's such a transformation. You go, okay, now The Rock's is in this film.
Yes. So earthiness, and you do see kind of some of the mechanics at work. So but actually, I'm very glad I saw it. Like, it does have moments where I was touched, really. The moments that I mentioned, kind of, the moment of heat, of sexual attraction, kind of seeing Emily Blunt play, I don't know, some cross between trailer trash and party girl, and doing it so well.
I thought she was really good, I must say. I thought she was excellent.
And the tenderness between them, actually, kind of, the sense, kind of, I thought they would end up just apart because, it's almost like one of those cliche stories where someone is so bad for you and you can't help loving them, right? The whole kind of narrative has that feel for it, the longing, the want, the feeling for them. and yet kind of they're bad for you, really. So you get that, very, very much in the film. So it surprised me later when they said, well, they married, and they were only married for 6 years. So
they do have a kid. But it disappoints me that it's just something that we just get told later. You just get, once the film ends and we go to 2025 and we see the real Mark Kerr shopping, which we'll talk about maybe. The film brings up text on the screen saying they got back together and they got married. And it's like, okay, I would have liked to have seen some of that, I suppose. Just told us.
Yeah, so, I thought the ending was, very abrupt because all of a sudden you see someone...
Yeah.
You
go, that ain't The Rock anymore. What they've done?
Exactly. And that ain't Mark anymore, except it turns out to be Mark 20 years later or whatever. Right? The real Mark.
The real Mark.
Looking very ordinary. Looking just like, a fat, middle-aged person in a supermarket. Kind of, and then you get this coda, all this information about how important he was to this sport and how he should be recognized and so on. And then, interestingly again, you get these pictures during the credits, and then kind of the Rock's look makes sense. Because in these pictures of the younger Mark, he's really handsome, he's always smiling, he seems really charismatic. Clearly something was lost along the way. To middle-age them. Right? And it wasn't just his body.
That's very mean. That's very, very mean. No, so, I agree with you about the stuff that The Rock does that is charming, and I think it is kind of refreshing to see someone behave like that in a film like this, I suppose. You expect him to be kind of self-centered or arrogant or whatever it might be from the start. But as you said, that stuff about that is really The Rock, I think, bringing himself to the film quite a lot. It's really, really pleasant. It's really nice. You go, I wasn't expecting this man to behave like this, to look like this. The fact that everyone in this league is very supportive of each other. It's a league in which they fight each other, but they're their mates. They fight their mates. And then ultimately, the relationship with the other character, whose name is also Mark, but that's why it's called Coleman, because everyone refers to him by his surname, who's incidentally played by Ryan Bader, who I definitely recognise from something.
He's very good.
He may have been in other Safdie films or something. I definitely recognise it, and he is very good. And it's like a huge part of the film is really a love story between the two of them.
Of course, really. Yes.
In a sense, it's not even so much that he's torn between his girlfriend and his work, but it's like his girlfriend and his boyfriend. His mate is he's been with him for years. They fought as kids. He trains him now.
Yeah, I don't see any conflict actually between his girlfriend and his friend. There's no conflict there. They're both kind of mutually supportive, and all of his conversations with her are about supporting him. So you don't get any sense of a conflict there at all. But it's true that those are the two main relationships, in the film. And, there's a different kind of love, but obviously a deep, deep bond, something that's not usually kind of or often explored in American cinema, which is, kind of just about male friendship, really. So it's not sexual, it's not competitive. It is mutually supportive when you think that they would be at each other's throats because they're competing in the same thing. Yeah, it's kind of, an interesting dimension of the film.
Film does a lot of exposition with interviews with journalists,
yes,
which I find quite disappointing. So it's particularly with the Coleman character, sat down with the journalist. It's always in Japan because this is where they're fighting. This is where all these tournaments take place. And so the Japanese journalist sat opposite them saying, if you lose, how will you feel? And he can't imagine losing because he never has before. The film is cueing you in to say he's going to lose pretty soon. And with Coleman, it's all, if you have to fight your friend and stuff. And it's just like, the characters are there just to tell you their feelings in words at this point.
It's a very poor screenplay. Yeah,
I think it is, yeah.
And actually, blame the director as well, because why did he go in with this mess of a story? Because I think there's a really interesting story, kind of at the center of it, which is really the relationship between Emily Blunt and The Rock. And I wish that the whole film had been about that, rather than making, a biopic about this figure, because that's where the film, to me, works best.
Yeah. Well, I hope it does very badly for The Rock, because I like when he doesn't seem like a happy person. This is the thing. It's like he's incredibly successful, but he doesn't seem happy, and I'm really into that. Like he tried to take over DC and make it all about him. He tried to make his production company at the centre of DC, and then Black Adam did really badly, and then James Gunn took it over, and I was like, yes, that's quite funny.
I have no views on him. I mean, I've seen quite a lot of his films, and I think they're really unexceptional, and their success kind of surprises me. But he himself is very kind of charming when I've seen him in photographs and in talk shows. So I really have no view on him, except that I like him very much in this.
Yeah.
And actually I think any actor of his type who is really like, I mean, Arnold Schwarzenegger was more interesting because he often played machines or mean-spirited people or people who were not nice, right? I mean, The Rock always seems to me to always play extraordinarily
Is that the
nice
case
people.
with Schwarzenegger? Apart from...
Yes.
Put Terminator aside for a second. What else was he antagonistic in?
Commando.
Was he?
Yes, he was. He played like, a pissed-off colonel in the middle of nowhere. The one with the extraterrestrial, which was more or less the same type of thing.
Predator.
Yeah.
He's the hero in these films.
It doesn't matter, but you could be a different kind of hero. In True Lies, he's someone who lies to his wife, etc. So he Schwarzenegger had darker edges.
Sure.
The Rock is a sunny personality.
Well, that's for sure. I mean, yeah, The Rock is very much in charge of his own image, and he's very interested in his own image and portraying himself the way he wants to be seen and so on. Which is one of the things that I think once you start to dig into it is less attractive about him. When it's all very superficial and like, oh, there he is, he's made another Fast and Furious film, he's made another Jungle Cruise film, whatever. Like, you just make more of those. That's what he's good at, and they're really nice and friendly and really into. Well, Fast and Furious aside, because I've only seen a couple of those, and one was abysmal. But like doing that kind of thing, that's what he's built for. That's where he's at home, and that's what I really like seeing him doing. It's kind of inconsequential and quite nice and quite exciting.
I like to see, actors like that take chances. And, sometimes they don't work and sometimes they do. Yeah, but kind of, it's always worth watching, I think. And worth complimenting them. And, they don't need to do this type of film, really. Unless, kind of, as you say, they're just gagging for that Oscar or something. Which, it might be, but I don't care. I mean, I'm glad he took this on. And I'm glad he took this on with these filmmakers. And it doesn't have to be like an unalloyed success to be a step forward.
Yeah, well, we'll see if he keeps on trying to do stuff like this, I suppose. I mean, in my eyes, what it is, it's his attempt, as I say, to attain, well, not just an Oscar, but just some legitimacy, essentially. It's a kind of acting that he's never done before. It looks serious because it's in shaky cam and all the rest of it, and he's made himself look different, and he sits there crying occasionally. And I think it's really transparent and not that appealing.
Well, to me, it's not as transparent as you say, and I find it very appealing that, they're taking these chances. I mean, he could just kind of continue to be a conglomerate. He's somebody who I don't think started off as an actor, though obviously,
We started as a wrestler, but...
wrestlers are performers.
Yeah.
Right? But, a very kind of different kind of performance. This is very interior. It's a risk, and I'm glad he took that risk. I enjoyed it, and I thought he was very good in it.
Fair enough. I am not a sucker.
All right, so a divided opinion. And on that note, thank you all very much for listening. We are eavesdropping at the movies, and we are on
Apple Podcasts, Audible, Spotify, SoundCloud, YouTube, and YouTube Music. On social media, we're on Facebook and Twitter at Eavesdrop Movies, and Blue Sky, eavesdropping.bsky.social. And the website is eavesdroppingatthemovies.com.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye. Ready when you are.
So, I suppose I just want to berate Cineworld. This is the second week in a row that we've been to see a film there where the projection has been terrible. Last week, the first 5-8 minutes of the film were entirely out of focus. We had to go and complain, and they had to get the focus fixed, right? Yeah. And this week, it's like the film began...
I've never seen a problem like this happen, by the way.
Exactly. I mean, it was amazing. So during the commercials, they were all during the advertisements for the film, they were already showing the subtitles for the film itself.
Yeah, so the film was a subtitled screening.
Yeah.
But the subtitles started in an advert for a car before the film started.
Yeah. So, and then we had to go and complain again. And then, of course, they realized they couldn't fix the problem. So it was either you show it without subtitles or with subtitles. Obviously, we were fine without the subtitles. But actually, there were people there who did need those subtitles and left the screening. So, this is...
It's really outrageous. Really outrageous. Because the subtitles were minutes out of sync. You were seeing what was going to be said minutes ahead of time.
Yeah.
And, you can sit through a lot of things in the film. Had this been unavoidable somehow, I would have sat through it, despite it being so distracting. But it's not okay.
No.
It's really bad.
I mean, this is not the amateur kind of film club. This is Cineworld. And we expect better. And certainly if they want people to continue going to the cinemas, the projection is not a minor thing. It's an absolutely essential thing, aspect of what they're doing. And, they're failing quite a lot. So kind of, change your ways, Cineworld. We deserve proper projection when paying to go to a movie.
I don't think you deserve proper projection, Jose. You'll like what you get.
Yes, mistress. Slap me some more.
I also just checked Ryan Bader, the guy who plays the friend, who I said I recognise from something. I don't recognise him from anything. He's a fighter.
Oh, right. Okay, he was wonderful.
He's an MMA fighter. He's won stuff. he's in UFC. He's just a fighter.
Well, so, I expected him to be one because he's got that body, and you don't get that body by accident. But I wonder if he'd maybe been a former, wrestler who had since become an actor, which of course he now is. Yeah.
I've got years active, 2007 to present. Looks like he's still fighting.
All right.
But
okay.
But yeah, and his only credit on IMDb is this.
Okay, interesting.
So
yeah.
I mean, a bloody good job then, because I didn't have no idea he was not a professional actor.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, well done.
All right.
But what the fuck do I recognise him from then? I'm not into fighting.
Your imagination.
Yeah.
The man of your dreams.
He must maybe so. He must just look like someone I recognise.